The war in the Middle East has nothing to do with NATO and is not a NATO war. That's the message from the office of the German Chancellor. For more on the mood among NATO allies, Euronews correspondent Shona Murray sent us this update.
Well, good morning, Maeve. And just as we thought the turmoil from last January when Donald Trump said he wanted to take over Greenland was coming to an end, Donald Trump, it appears, is trying to draw NATO into his war with Iran, with comments at the weekend saying that NATO would face a very bad future if it doesn't support Donald Trump and help sort out the situation with the Strait of Hormuz. I caught up with the Finnish Foreign Affairs Minister, Elina Valtonen, and I asked her about this prospect.
NATO, first and foremost, its purpose is, as the North Atlantic Treaty says, for the North Atlantic security, and therefore that's our top priority. And also, NATO is a defensive alliance in any case. But having said all this, of course, we will be closely scrutinizing together with our partners and allies, so both in NATO but also in the European Union, whether there are ways in which we can help to both have the Strait of Hormuz open up, but also to make it secure going forward as well.
NATO is a defensive alliance, not an offensive alliance, so therefore it can't be dragged into a war of the United States and Israel's making. Is that what you're saying?
NATO is indeed a defensive alliance, and we won't be dragged into any war of choice. But having said all this, we, of course, have a collective interest, and I should say not only within NATO, but as the world, to have the oil flowing and also the situation to de-escalate. And that is certainly something we are calling for.
OK, so what's then the EU and I guess NATO, but let's say European response going to be to try to help reopen and keep open the Strait of Hormuz, given the impact it's having on the global economy and oil prices?
Yeah, so, today in Brussels, but also in the upcoming days, we will be discussing this with our closest partners and allies, so both within the European Union and in NATO, whether there should be some sort of an operation which could be there for that precise purpose, that we both keep this strait open, not just for now, but also for the future. But having said all this, it will require very close scrutiny because, for instance, I can say that for countries like Finland, we as NATO members and securing a very long border with Russia as well, we certainly need our capabilities first and foremost to deter the threat of Russia against the entire alliance.
Back a few months ago, there was Greenland. OK, then you have months before that, all NATO allies saying that they're going to increase spending to 5%, and everyone did that. And now you have Donald Trump taking away the Russian sanctions against the Kremlin, which is probably one of the most effective thing that Europe has done. Now that Putin can get all this money from the oil revenue, it means he can spend it on the war in Ukraine and actually Russian attacks against NATO territory.
Well, you see, the Russian economy showed some serious cracks earlier this year. And many were, of the opinion that finally the sanctions that we have put on do work. And certainly the sanctions have played a massive role in weakening Russia's fiscal position, which is good because Russia is using its rubles essentially to fund its war machine. But now that the oil price has been ticking up and it probably will be staying there for some time, that certainly helps Russia on a daily basis.
Should Europe say, OK, we will help you, but we need a better deal on Ukraine, whether it's security guarantees, or we need you to take away the tariffs that you've imposed on us that are really damaging our economies or creating global instability?
Certainly, if there's going to be a decision to be helping out with the Strait of Hormuz, then certainly there's a lot of leverage that we can also make use of. But let's...
Like what? What would you think?
Let's not rush into conclusions here, but what has to be said that not only Ukraine, but also Europe have very strong cards, especially in the long term.